Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for a public service announcement for PathOfExile players, and that is that you probably should not use pre 3.19 crafting guides in patch 3.19 or going further forward. And that's because of a number of things. Most importantly, it's the exalted orb and divine orb swap and the harvest changes, but also some of the new mods. Basically, a lot of old crafting guides are going to be out of date. You can still use them, partly to get some insight into how crafters think, and also partly because some of them will still work, but you just need to apply some due diligence first. The first reason is new priority mods that are being added in some slots. You'll see here this Kraken Band Bone Ring has a number of mods that will be pretty appealing to a minion build. Minions deal 32% increased damage and have 30% increased movement speed. You're probably going to want these over alternatives. This only really applies to minion builds as far as we know. There may be some other priority mods being added, but these are the ones we know about. And a lot of old crafting guides are about how to make what used to be the best things possible, but they're not necessarily going to be the best anymore. The next thing you want to be aware of, though, is the Exalted Orb and Divine Orb swap. 5 bench crafts that used to be denominated, 4 of them in Exalts and 1 in Blessed Orbs, are called out in the patch notes as being changed to cost Divine Orbs instead. These are prefixes can't be changed, suffixes can't be changed, can have up to 3 crafted modifiers, cannot roll attack mods, and cannot roll caster mods. These are being changed to 2, 2, 2, 1, and 1 Divine Orbs respectively. The Divine Orb recipe is being removed. In short, there is a fundamental change that is going to totally transform how important Exalted Orbs are in the economy. Exalted Orbs used to be something that you hoarded and didn't really use until you had an item that was already very, very, very good, at which point you might spend some Exalted Orbs in order to make it better. That's going to change, and I think there'll be much more of a middle tier currency. Not something you're going to necessarily be using while you're going through the axe, but they're going to be something you'll feel pretty comfortable about using at endgame once you've got enough resources to trade for a few more of them. And some of the things you might want to do in the future that haven't previously been worthwhile doing are things like upgrading a mediocre piece of equipment with 100 to 129% increased physical damage on a weapon, or a mediocre set of gloves with 37 to 43% increased damage while leeching, or alternately another weapon craft is hits can't be evaded. All of these are quite powerful crafts with very situationally useful, but at the moment they're pretty prohibitively expensive in 3.18 and before. And this means that they basically get dismissed. So crafting guides that were written in 3.18 and before didn't consider these as options unless they were aiming at the power gamer audience. Whereas in the future, I think these are going to be much more accessible to casual players. Note that it is only the 5 crafts that are called out explicitly in the patch notes that are changing to Divine Orbs. On the flip side, anything that costs Divine Orbs is going to be much more expensive in the future, and so you may want to restructure a couple of crafting strategies in order to minimize the potential to want to use Divine Orbs later in crafting. One good example of this is that if you are trying to get a T1 mod on an item, you might actually roll over that T1 mod if it is poorly divined. And that's going to be something that once Divine Orbs settle in price, we'll be able to give a bit more concrete advice on how exactly to do. The next major change is Harvest. Harvest is being overhauled and it's going to be much more tradable than it's been in the past. A couple of the very top end crafts are being nerfed. We know the details of what's happening to the augment crafts. The augment crafts are going to remove a random mod first, then they're going to augment the mod. But we don't know what's happening to a number of other important crafts. Just to use examples that I've made videos on in the past, influence shifts. We don't know if they're going to exist or not. We don't know if upgrade a magic item to rare adding 3 high tier mods or its sister crafts of 2 high tier mods and 4 high tier mods, all of which have their uses. For crafting cluster jewels, we don't know if those are going to still exist in the new patch. Does reforge an item much more likely to receive the same mods back still exist? Because that's a very powerful craft that's used very widely. Does reforge an item keeping all suffixes or reforge an item keeping all prefixes still exist? How rare are these crafts going to be? Do they require killing a Sharby, or are they ones that you can get just through normal harvest encounters? And how many Reforge Plus crafts can we realistically use? All these questions are up in the air. As well as that, there's always the potential for mods to get shifted around. One thing that would break a number of crafting guides, for example, would be if GGG decided to add a lower tier version of the Malicious prefix. Malicious is item level 83 and up, added chaos damage to weapon attacks. If a lower level version of that was added, that would break a lot of the strategies people use with fossils in order to guarantee certain outcomes. Anyways, I wanted to keep this short as a bit of a PSA. May your harvest crafts have interesting results, and I'll see you in 3.19.